and welcome to episode 113 of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. This month's episode ties in with a feature we'll be running in the December issue of the magazine, and we probably should have waited and released it then. But I was in Suffolk signing off the October issue, and our guest lives just down the road, so I threw my trusty field recorder into the boot and headed to Ipswich to meet Steve Grimwood, owner of the Giulia cycling team car, which has been such a hit at AROC events this summer. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Lots of people will have seen the car on track at National Alfa Day. I think that was the highlight of many people's National Alfa Day this year. So I just want to take a step back. We'll talk about the car in a minute, but tell us a little bit about you and your background.
Absolutely. I'm here in Ipswich and I run a bicycle shop, and I've been in the bicycle trade all my life. And I describe myself first and foremost as a mechanic. I love mechanical things. I'm certainly not a professional car mechanic, but I can understand how things work, and I love discovering how things work. And I've always been into old cars, and I think when I was in my mid-20s, I was persuaded by a friend, or a friend's dad actually, to take on and buy a 1939 Morris 8 Tourer. So it was a pretty rough state when I got it, but I happened upon this old vintage car and had an absolutely wonderful time with it. I did London to Brighton, took it to Belgium. We took it all over the place, and over that time I had that car for 30 years and I rebuilt it from top to bottom. I think I became the country's leading expert in 1939 Morris 8 Series E Tourers.
Probably a small pool.
A very, very niche interest. As the years went on, I kind of got to a point where I'd finished the car. I'd rebuilt it to a concours condition by the end. I'd hoarded all the spares you could ever need. I'd pretty much done everything you could do with it, including I'd been to Belgium with my late father. I'd done my sister's wedding. I'd done friends and family's weddings. I'd kind of done all those normal things, but suddenly got to a point where there really wasn't anything else to do, that I wasn't repeating things I'd done in the past. And over the last 10 years, using a pre-war car on the road kind of started to lose its enjoyment. When I first got the car, I thought nothing of going down to Brighton, on the London to Brighton, driving through central London, driving around the M25 in the dark at 45 miles an hour with the clutch slipping, and a couple of mates in the back and a couple of bicycle lights on the back, hoping that they'd do. I think either I've got older and wiser, or the traffic has got a lot faster and a lot bigger. I think it's probably the latter one. But it got to a point where I just suddenly decided one night, I thought, you know what, I've done everything I'm going to do. It's time to try something else. And I'd always had this little inkling that I needed an Alfa Romeo. And I think it comes from my dad, who, when I was growing up, when I was very young, we had a typical sort of 1960s decor, I think, with those doors in your house which had 4 panels on them, 4 plain panels, and he'd got some vintage car wallpaper and cut out the pictures of the cars and stuck them on these panels.
All over the house, or just your bedroom?
No, that would be a bit weird. Okay, that would be a bit strange. That would be obsessive. No, just my bedroom, just on the inside. But he'd stuck these pictures, and I can vividly remember, I'd got no interest in old cars. I was about 5 or 6 years old, but he'd cut out these pictures, and one of them was I think it was an Alfa Romeo 8C. It was a pre-war Alfa Romeo, but it had got the badge next to it. And I can still remember just looking. There was a Bentley, an Alfa Romeo, a Lagonda, and something else. There was 4 pre-war cars, but I always remember that the Alfa Romeo badge was the one that I liked the most, and I just kept looking at it when I was young, and I looked at this car, and I think it was, say, an 8C or a 6C or something like that, and I loved it. And I think that just those little funny things just stick with you all your life. And a few years ago, I nearly bought, I think it was a 156 that I'd seen at a show, and I just got this kind of hankering that I knew I wanted something. So I came home one night and I told the wife, I said, I think I'm going to sell the Morris. And she sort of looked shocked and went, what do you mean you're going to sell the Morris? I said, no, I think I'm done with it. And she goes, well, okay, it's up to you, whatever. But it was part of the family. And I kind of told my children as well, and they're like, really, Dad, you're going to sell it? And I'm like, yeah, I think I'm done with it. So I just sat there one evening, I put it on eBay and sold it that night. It actually turned out that it was a local garage who bought it to raffle. They put it in one of these raffle competitions. They knew the person who'd done the work. They'd seen the quality of the restoration that was on it, and the guy just phoned up and said, "Yep, that's the one we want. We'll have it." And he just came and paid me cash. All of a sudden, I'd got no car, an empty garage, and an envelope full of money. So that's the background. That's the first bit of the story, I guess. And then I got this empty garage that I decided, well, what am I going to do? And I started looking around, and I kind of had this little inkling that I wanted to combine my work, my bicycles, and my passion for cycling with the cars. And I'd always had a hankering for an old team car, for a Tour de France team car. I thought I loved the kind of the stories behind them and the stuff going on around them. They're just interesting to look at. And I'd been to Belgium that year and seen outside the cycling museum in Oudenaarde, there's a Volvo 244 in orange and black in the Italian Molteni colours of Eddy Merckx. And that's probably the most famous one. Now, I'd been looking at Volvos and I'd found a couple online and I thought, oh, shall I, shan't I? And I showed my wife a picture of a Volvo and she goes, oh, it's ugly. I was like, what do you want one of them for? And I was like, yeah, but it's cool, isn't it? I can do that. And she was like, no. And it was really blunt. She was just as blunt as that. She was like, so, apologies for anyone that's got a Volvo 244, but my wife doesn't like them. So she was under no illusion. So then I started looking around at other stuff and I thought, well, I could do a VW bay window. They use those quite a bit. And I thought, no, I didn't want a van because I've got a T5 van that I drive around in. So I was just trying to look around for a suitable car to do a team car. And the obvious one's a Peugeot as well. They were used in the Tour de France, a Peugeot 404s and 504s, but the 504's too big to go in my garage. So that was out.
Even without bikes on.
Yeah, I've only got a normal single garage, and most modern cars, or most cars don't fit in normal garages. So, and I didn't want to keep it somewhere else because half the fun is being able to just go outside at home and tinker with your car. So it had to fit in the garage. So I started to get this criteria of it had to be something that was used or would have been used as a cycling team car. I knew I wanted to do that. It had to be interesting and it had to be small enough to go in the garage. So it kind of limits it quite quickly. And I've got a friend who comes into the shop, Jamie, who's got a little 105 Junior. And I'd always really liked that. And every time he came around in, I thought, that's a fantastic little car. It's really good. And I spoke to him and I was chatting to him about cars. And he said, oh, yeah, these are really good. And I said, well, I think I want 4 seats though, because I like to be able to take friends in them and that. And I think he showed me a picture of a Giulia 105. And I thought, yeah, that's quite cool. I quite like that. And then I started looking around for pictures. And I found a picture online of Felice Gimondi, an Italian cyclist who was one of the only cyclists who ever won the World Championships, the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. So he was a big deal in Italy. He was very, very well known. He was the rival for Eddy Merckx, who was the guy with the Volvo 244. So I thought, this guy's quite interesting. And I kind of had a little look and suddenly found a picture of a Alfa Romeo Giulia 105 saloon in the colours of Gimondi's team, which was Salvarani, a high-end Italian kitchen manufacturer. And I thought, that's really cool. And the car was in the celeste blue of the Bianchi bicycles. So it's a very famous colour, very Italian colour, a lot of Fiats. And I think some of the earlier Spiders were in that celeste blue. It's a very 60s colour, but quite a rare one. I thought, I quite like that. So I went onto eBay that night. And this all happened within about a week of selling the Morris. And I went onto eBay and there was one for sale. It was a 1966 105 4-door saloon in celeste blue, left-hand drive, which I was happy with because it kind of feels more Italian. And it was for sale for exactly the same price as I'd sold the Morris for. I don't mind saying it was for sale for £10,000, which I thought, well, that's about right money. It's not cheap. It's about right. And it looked pretty solid. So I phoned the chap up and found out a bit more about it. And it was a running car that needed some work. It was pretty much, well, it was all original. So it hadn't been messed around with. There was nobody had done any work to it, which was important to me because I think, well, I didn't want to start having to unpick something everyone else had gone. However, it came with the original engine and axle but it had a 2-litre engine popped in it and the 2-litre axle. And I thought, well, I live in Suffolk and that's a long way from everywhere. So whenever you want to go, it's a long old drive down a dual carriageway. And I thought, well, the 2-litre is pretty useful for that. So I had a little look, bit of to and fro in, didn't really haggle over it, and I just went and bought it. And that was that. I was suddenly a proud owner of a 1966 Giulia saloon in Celeste Blue. The thing I didn't realise at that time was just how rare the Celeste Blue ones were.
Yep.
I've seen 2 in the UK, that's it. And also, I didn't realise just how lucky I'd got in getting a car from 1966, which I hadn't quite appreciated was a little bit of a cut-off year. So the 1966 is the earlier design. It's the flat dashboard with the umbrella handbrake on the dash. It's a little bit of an earlier model. It's got the split bench seat in the front and a few little quirks. But and I think there's a few shows like Goodwood. It's pre-1966 parking. And the 66 is a nice cut-off year for vintage cars that I hadn't quite appreciated. So I'm pleased I got that date. But also, turns out that 66 was the exact year that Gimondi won the Paris-Roubaix, and it all tied in with a lot of the pictures that I found now that actually matched that date. So when I started designing the graphics to go on the car, that 66 year, just everything fell into place, and it's just been wonderful. And now I know that I couldn't change it for a 69 or a 72 car because it just wouldn't match. I do appreciate that that's a little bit geeky, and it sounds a bit geeky, and there's about 2 people in the whole country that probably will appreciate those little details, but they mean quite a lot to me. I kind of like all of those little things that link together. So there we go. So I suddenly got a 1966 Alfa Romeo Giulia 1300 Ti, but with a 2-litre engine in it, and sitting in my garage. So,
with lots of links to a team car, but a long way from being a team car.
A long way. So yeah, it was just a plain blue one. So I started having a look at it. So that's where the restoration begins. So this has all happened in September last year. So I think it was in my garage at the end of September, beginning of October, I think it was. And so that's the first part of the story. The second part of the story is the restoration starts. So I kind of went in, there was 3 things going on, I guess. The first one was the research into how I wanted the car to look. And I knew what I wanted to do there. I didn't want to copy a team car in 1966. Firstly, because they were actually pretty boring, because all they did was they grabbed a car, put a couple of stickers on it, used it for that race, took the stickers off, and it went back to being the person's car. The teams didn't have the money in those days really to have a dedicated team car. It wasn't a thing.
When it was a big commitment as well, wasn't it? Because it was paint if you wanted to do it properly. You couldn't. These days you can wrap it and
it was literally just some. So they'd normally put like a big board on the bumper and things like that. Saying that, they did used to cut a massive hole in the roof so they could stand up out of it. But these cars,
which you haven't done.
I didn't.
Lack of commitment.
No, I knew I didn't want to do that. So I didn't want to copy a team car. I have a very simple philosophy, which I'm an avid vintage bike collector as well, and I have a kind of philosophy which goes that if it's the actual car that was used in a race or historically, or if it's the actual bike that was used in the Tour de France, then that bicycle should be preserved 100% and kept as close to the original condition as possible. If it's not the actual bike, do what you like.
Yeah, it's a tribute to rather than a replica.
And I don't like using the word copy, or even replica is kind of, replicas are okay, but when people build a replica and they try and make it exactly the same as the original and then get a little bit overstressed by it, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, because if it's not the bike, it's not the bike. So just kind of make it how you...
And we'll talk about the reaction to the car later on, but we took some photos this afternoon, which will be in the next issue of the magazine, and just driving to and from the location, everybody's looking at the car as it goes past. And again, we'll talk more about the engine later, and part of that is they look before they even know what it is because they hear it coming. But I don't think anybody's ever going to look at it and say, "Oh, that Bianchi sticker's in the wrong place."
Well, like I say, there's probably less than half a dozen people in the country who would be able to spot that difference anyway, and a few in Italy maybe. But I think once that once they appreciate what you're trying to do, it's all quite reasonable. And if they don't like that, well, they're probably not my type of person anyway. So like I say, if it's the original, then it stays original. If it's a tribute, then put some of your own flair on it, something that identifies it as yours. So what I wanted to do was to build this tribute and bring in elements of the riders and the teams and do everything correctly. So everything on there needed to be correct to the period. It's what could have been on there had they chosen to, or actually a celebration of something that happened that they wouldn't have had time to put on. So for example, I've designed a roundel on the bonnet which celebrates the fact that Gimondi won the Tour de France, the Giro d'Italia, and the World Championships. Now, he didn't win all of those things in the same month. That happened over a period of a few years, but I can actually put that on as a celebration to that. They would have never had any reason to put 1966 on the bonnet, because that was the year. I mean, why would you put 1966 on the bonnet? But that's...
You wouldn't put 25 on now, no. Just for...
And I think having the 66 on the roundel makes a wonderful badge. It celebrates the year. People say, oh, what year is that? And you can say, oh, it's 1966. It's a 66 car. And 66 is just one of those really good-looking numbers that just looks great on a badge. It's just like, it's very... The symmetry is really nice. So I like that. So those sorts of things. And the stripes. And so I designed it how I wanted to have it. But it's all the correct colours, the right Pantones, the right logos, the right names. So you've got nice things like we've got the Bianchi logo on the side of the car. We've got Bianchi bikes on the back, which would have been correct. The Bianchis are in Celeste and the car's in Celeste. The 66 refers to the races that are listed on the car, but that's also the age of the car. I've got Pirelli tyres on it, and Pirelli make bicycle tyres. Campagnolo made the gears for the bicycles. So Bianchi bikes would have had Campagnolo gears on, but a lot of people also know that Campagnolo made wheels for Alfa Romeo. So there's some really lovely links that all work. And
you said you're a vintage bike collector. Were they Bianchis that you had already, or you bought them to go with the car?
So I had the bikes before the car, and the bikes that's on the back of the car is 100% period correct. Late 1950s Bianchi champion of the world, Campione del Mondo, and it's lovely, beautiful. It sits on there, and that worked really well. So that was part one. Part one of the restoration was designing what I wanted it to look like. Part two was just then trying to see what it was I'd got and trying to plan and schedule a restoration that I could do that wasn't going to break the bank, because you could do it, and then kind of decide how far to go, because the easiest thing to do would have been to just strip the entire car to a shell, send it off to a body shop and get it back completely painted and looking perfect. And I just didn't want to, having had a concours car, I didn't really want to go down that route of having something that just looked like it comes straight out of the factory. It had been completely resprayed and I didn't want to use it. But it was not going to be quite as simple as that, because as anybody will know, if you decide to buy an old car and you then go onto eBay and buy the first one you see and the cheapest one you find, you're going to have some work to do. That's probably not the best advice, but then you get lucky and you get little gems like the one I've got, because I've never seen another one. So I started stripping it apart in the garage, started to assess what was wrong, worked out pretty quickly that the front floor pans were gone, so I was going to have to replace the floors. They were thinner than a crisp packet. There was a little bit of rust on the front sill and around the rear light, but actually other than that, that was it. So,
and all relatively easy bits to get for a 105.
So ordered a couple of new rear floor pans, one new jacking point, and then phoned around a few body shops that I knew and booked it in to have the floors done. It's stripped and undersealed at the bottom underneath, and a little bit of work around the rear lights, but decided not to respray it, not to fix anything. It had got some dents in the roof where someone had stored stuff on the roof, and I thought, you know what, actually,
it's going to have bikes going on and off the roof.
It's going to work. So we actually decided to do a sympathetic restoration, just fix the rust, get rid of any holes, but not repaint it. And I'm really pleased I did that, because it actually looks like it's being used rather than something that's just come out of a body shop. So I booked it in to be done in December, and this was, by now we were in middle of October. So I had a little window to strip the car completely and decide of all the other mechanical parts what was going to be done. And for anybody that's really got nothing better to do, they can follow all of that on Instagram and see what material. It was quite a nice journey of discovery.
But it was always going to be do this and have it ready for next year?
Yes, there was a schedule. So I had a deadline, told the body shop that, they could have it in December. I wanted it back by February because I booked the car into the local Ipswich to Felixstowe Classic Car Run, which is in beginning of May, and that had to be ready for then. So there was quite a lot to do. And I literally stripped the car to every last nut and bolt, pretty much. Didn't take the suspension apart. That was okay. It was working. I left that alone. So kept it on its wheels, but everything else came off. Right down to things like I had to take the instrument panel apart, fix the gauges weren't working, silly little things that took far longer than they should have. Like I wanted to rechrome the bezel around the speedo. So I took the instrument panel out of the dash, took the little chrome bezel off, sent that off to the chrome platers, and then I'd got the glass front, which was kind of free, and I thought, well, it'd be silly not to clean that before you put it back in. So I thought, I'll give it a clean. So I think it must have been about 11:30 at night, and I just thought, I'll just give that a quick clean before I put it back in, because the chrome bezel had come back. And I just wandered over to the sink and ran it under the tap. Oh, that was a perfectly sensible thing, you'd have thought. Till you remember that all the numbers on the glass are water slide transfers. And I turned the tap on, and I just stood there and watched all the numbers just slide off the glass and down the plug hole. And I was just like, oh, you are kidding. What have I just done? And you're just like, silly things like that. But when you look back at them, they're part of the story of it. And so then I had to kind of get straight onto eBay, find some Airfix decals, try and find a font that was the same, and then try and work out where they had to go. So I had to kind of put the glass on and then get a white marker pen and draw around it. And it was just like one of those extra jobs that ended up taking a week to get the numbers back on, just because you're just like a little bit tired, and I think every mechanic in the world... Put some
lacquer on this time.
Well, I think every mechanic in the world has done that thing where they just go, just check that bolt, and you just go and tighten it, and it's like, it was perfectly all right, and you just snap it or round it off or do something silly. So I think we've all done that. The big one though, so this is just as the body shell had gone off, was the engine. Knew it was in a bad way. It was so I didn't mention, so come back a little bit, the car actually came with a 2-litre engine fitted. It was an Alfetta engine that the guy put in it. It came with the 1300 as well, the original engine and axle, but the engine that was in the car was a 2-litre. Now it ran, but it didn't run well. It sounded rough, and it wasn't terrible, but I knew it wasn't right. So I took it up to a local garage who's got a rolling road, and we were going to put it on there and see if we could get it running any better, but they pretty much straight away realised that it had got a pretty bad air leak from the carb inlet. The rubbers had gone, so it was running super lean anyway, and it was starting to rattle a bit. So we didn't put it on the rolling road, we left it. I was driving it back home, and all of a sudden there was a big bang, a big pop, and a big lump of smoke came out the back of the engine, and that was decision made. The engine was gone. Took it apart. Well, I did a compression test on it and found there was absolutely no compression from cylinder 1, so that's decision made. So the engine had to come out, which was good because it meant I could tidy up the engine bay anyway. So
that really is silver lining in the cloud stuff, isn't it?
I think, but it was good. So I wanted to do it. So I've got an engine crane. I took everything. So it was just part of the job. So and this was still towards the end of October, before the car went off to the body shop. So I thought, right, well, it can go to the body shop without an engine in it. That's fine. So the engine came out. It went off to a local engine builder, James Wright. I think a lot of people know him. He's regular on the race circuit with his John West cars. James took it apart. I went over to have a look at it. And yes, we've got a hole in piston 1, we've got a bent valve, and looked like something had gone through the engine, a random nut or washer, I expect. So something had happened there. But also there was a lot of wear on parts. The chain tensioner was in the wrong place, had been fitted right. So it was just full rebuild for the engine. So that was fine. James got on with that while the car was being stripped. So I carried on stripping it. It went off to the body shop to have the floor pans replaced and those bits of pieces done, and then came back to me in mid-January. So mid-January I had a car back in the garage, an engine that was being rebuilt that was due back to me by the end of January, I think it was, maybe February. I just had to crack on with it. So I started rebuilding it. Redid all the interior, local trimmers fitted some new seat covers that I'd ordered, and then just tackled everything. So it was everything from the seat belts to everything in the engine bay, rewired it, put all new electrics in, new fuse box, new lights, headlights, ordered a new front grille from Italy. I decided to go down the super front end with the twin headlights because that matched all of the pictures that I'd got. And for some reason, I was obsessed with having yellow inner headlights. And I don't know why, but it just kind of looks cool and I quite like it. So that's where we went with that. So that was busy time, lots and lots of late nights. I work full time. I run my own shop, so I work 8:30 till 6 every day. So all this stuff was done in the evenings. So it was quite nice. It was good. It shows you can rebuild an Alfa Romeo in your garage in the evenings. But my wife managed to watch a lot of Netflix and box sets because I was out the way. So she was quite happy for the winter because she said she'd never managed to watch so many things uninterrupted or without me flicking over to Bangers and Cash or Shed and Buried, which was she was over the moon with, really. So that was that. So we cracked on. That's all on Instagram. You can see all the pictures of that. And in the meantime, I got busy designing the graphics for the car and figuring out how I was going to put some bikes on. Originally, I've got pictures of how the bike's being used in the bike races, and the bike sat off the back of the car on the boot. The front, where you take the front wheel out, the front forks go on to just behind the rear windscreen, and the bikes sort of hang off the boot by about 3 foot, I suppose. And I knew I didn't want to do that because I think modern traffic, I didn't want the bikes hanging right off the back. And also the reason they did that was because they used to cut a massive hole in the roof so you could stand up.
So they couldn't go any further forward?
No, and so they could stand up and shout at the riders. So I thought, I don't want to cut a hole in the roof either. I'm not that obsessed. I want to be able to use this car when I haven't got bikes on it as well. So I had to figure out how to do that. And I found that a standard roof rack won't fit the 105 because it's got quite a curved roof. The gutters are quite low down. So I tried I ordered several different ones off eBay and then found one that a lot of people buy for minis. It was advertised as a mini roof rack, but it's a 1960s roof rack, Swedish one, I think, made by JS or something like that. But I found one in really good nick and it fitted absolutely perfectly. And then 2 weeks later I found another one, a new old stock one on Facebook Marketplace. So I managed to buy two of the matching roof racks for about 50 quid each and made what I wanted out of 2 roof racks. So sort of bolted a few things different places, added some reinforcers, made them that. Once I got it how I wanted, then I sent that off to the powder coaters to get it done in Old English white, and it came back looking absolutely amazing. It just fitted the car. It looked so different to when it was just galvanized metal, which looked really rough. So did that. Had to figure out how to put the back wheels onto the boot and found an MX-5 boot rack fitted perfectly. So an MX-5 boot rack, used a couple of rubber suckers to kind of make it look like it was stuck to the boot, and then used some sort of V-shaped channel from some old bike fittings I've got at the shop, some old display fittings. Bolted it all together and it all looked absolutely smashing. And so many people would come up to me and say, well, where did you get this? This looks amazing. And it's really just a collection of bits and pieces, but it's one of those things that you just kind of have to make it up as you go along. You have to hold the bike up, work out where it's going to go. I wanted it as low as possible, tucked in, so the pedals were the bike were just behind the rear windscreen, but I've got it low enough so I can still drive into my garage with the bikes on the roof.
Right.
And you're less likely to hit a car park barrier as well if you forget. So it kind of all worked really well. So designed that, got the car back, got it all put back together again, and made it in time for the Ipswich to Felixstowe run in April.
So that was your kind of milestone event.
Yeah.
Wasn't the only event you've done this year, was it?
No. So I've probably overdone it a little bit. So apologies to anyone that's listening to this that is just kind of gone, oh my God, it's that car again, because I've had a whale of a time. I've had so much fun. It's been absolutely brilliant.
I'm trying to remember where I first saw it, but it was probably, I don't think it was the April event, but it was probably May-ish time I saw it somewhere.
Could be, yeah. Or if it was on social media, because it seems to have taken a life of its own on social media. So we did Ipswich to Felix. Well, actually, I'd finished the car the week before Ipswich to Felixstowe run, which was my deadline. And the week before that, there was a car show at Kersey Mill, just outside Lavenham, where the magazine's printed. Yeah, it's a lovely place. And there was so that was the first show.
That's probably where I saw the photos, actually.
Yeah, that was the first show I did, and the reception I got to that was fantastic. Then I did Ipswich to Felixstowe run, and from there on done a whole bunch of local shows, done the local scene, been fantastic. But the nice thing about this little car is I've managed to mix it up, and I've done, as well as car shows, I've done a lot of vintage bicycle shows, retro bike events. So I went to the Cotswolds Retro Ride, which is a celebration of vintage cycling, which is held at Prescott Hill Climb. So they start and finish there. Cotswolds, such a beautiful area. So I went along there and led that ride, and the reception from the cycling guys was incredible. It was wonderful. They appreciated the detail of the races. But that was on the Saturday. And then on the Sunday, just down the road, the Cotswolds Alfa Day.
Right.
So I took the opportunity to nip to there. So that was my first Alfa show that I'd ever been to. And I drove along there, and the guys there were, I think, genuinely just shocked because no one had seen that sort of car there anywhere. And there wasn't too many older Alfas there. I think there was probably only 2 or 3 of us. And the reception I got there was amazing. And
it brings 3 kind of threads together. I mean, not everybody who listens to the podcast will know this, but before I got involved in the magazine, I was a cycling photographer. So I've got a cycling background as well. And there's lots of people who are into cycling who, because of Campagnolo and Bianchi and Colnago and all of those things, are kind of Italophiles as well. Yeah. And there's lots of Alfa drivers who are also Italophiles. Yeah. So you bring all of that together in an Alfa with bikes on the roof that are Italian and...
Yeah, you know what? This is one of the things that I think, you can go on about how the press decides to pit everyone against each other and all the rest of that. But putting all that to one side, I know from the world that I'm in, without any exception, everybody that's into classic bikes and vintage bikes are also into something else. Very people are just bike riders. They'll be into classic cars or race cars or something like that. If you like mechanical things, you like mechanical things.
And if you race bikes, you like speed. So
yes, you like that whole atmosphere. And nobody starts out being a car mechanic, really. You start off by taking things apart. You start off by taking your bicycle apart or your washing machine or building a go-kart. That's how you learn what you do. So everyone's got these fond memories which really come together nicely. But I was so grateful to the guys at the Alfa show at the Cotswolds because they were so friendly, all came up and had a chat. I just turned up by myself, so first ever Alfa show. And the guys were wonderful and they gave me classic car of the show. So it was just such a pat on the back because that was literally its first kind of show out and I was so chuffed. That was on the Sunday, and then on the Monday I went down to Bath to the offices of the Global Cycling Network, GCN, who create lots of online content. They're a big YouTube channel and they did a video of the car or produced a film on YouTube, but you can find it on there, which was fantastic because that was from the cycling perspective. But all of the comments, thousands of comments on that video. It's had, 60, 70,000 views on there. And all of the comments pretty much go along the same lines. Vintage bikes, vintage cars, Alfa Romeo, what's not to like? I love the Alfa Romeo. It's just that shared passion is really good. So it's been fantastic. Done a few other bike events, done a few other car events, did the National Alfa Day. I had a great fun driving around there. I had got this kind of hope that I was going to end up going to Italy this year. That wasn't going to happen because I realised that the suspension did need doing, even though I put it off. So that's the plan for this winter. But as a consolation, I thought I'd take it to Zandvoort.
So the sprint track at Bicester Heritage, Bicester Motion as it is now, wasn't enough for you?
No, Zandvoort was great. So where I am in Suffolk, it's literally a 30-minute drive to Harwich and Harwich to Hook of Holland crossing. So actually it was a really easy decision. Just a 30-minute drive in the evening to Harwich on the overnight ferry, and I think it was an hour's drive to Zandvoort. So it was actually closer to me than Bicester.
Really? Well, apart from the 8 hours on the ferry in the middle.
You just have a beer and go to sleep on that bit. That's quite nice. Then at Zandvoort, absolutely dynamo. I stopped once just outside Zandvoort to pop the bikes on the roof rack, because the great thing I didn't know was going to be true. I had no idea how big the boots are on a 105 Giulia. They're fantastic. I can actually get...
It's a mafia car. There's got to be enough room for a body.
You could get two bodies in there, because I can get both of the bikes off the roof in the boot with the wheels. It's incredible. So people can't believe it, because you open the boot and pull two bicycles out.
The Series 1 Spider's the same. You open the boot and you...
How? I never knew that was going to be the case. So it's just so practical. It's brilliant. But when just outside Zandvoort, I stopped to put the bikes on the gut, and then immediately got collared by about 4 cyclists who were riding back, who wanted to know everything about the car. And eventually I had to just go, look, guys, I need to go, because I'm supposed to be going to this show. Then got stopped again just at the gates by some people who wanted to take pictures before we'd got in. And then we got in and had a great time there. The reception was fantastic. Another chap who's in Belgium, who's got a 105, who's also into cycling, but had never put bikes on his car, had seen that I was going. So he put a couple of bikes on his car and we parked them up next to each other. Just friend. But this is a nice thing. Instant friends, instant connection, shared interests, shared passions. That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's all about just being able to just go somewhere unfamiliar, but have something familiar to share and talk about, and people that you've never met before in your life, and you can just have that conversation and an interesting time. That's what it's all about, isn't it? It's fantastic. So met up with him, and then I thought, I wonder if I'm allowed on the track. And I went and asked him the thing. I said, I know not the fast laps. They do a parent and child one, and I've got my daughter with me. I mean, she's 25, but she's still my daughter. So I said, could
don't use the parent and child parking spaces at the supermarket.
No. And I said, could we do this parent and child lap? And they sort of looked, and they said, yeah, there's no problem at all. I said, well, what about the bikes on the back? Is that all right? And he just sort of looked, and he just said, well, he says, did you drive here with them on? And I said, well, half the way, yeah. And he said, well, did they fall off? And I said, no. And he said, well, that's all right then. And that's Dutch health and safety. That's fantastic. So the marshals all looked a bit confused and didn't quite know what was going on, but I'm reliably informed that I've got the only Giulia 105 that's been round a Formula 1 circuit with bicycles on the roof.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true.
So I'll take that. But all in all, the shows have been fantastic. I've done far more than I expected to do, and the reception has been incredible, and I love the Alfa Romeo scene. I love how welcoming all the people are. I've loved chatting to people about the cars, and now I've got to rebuild the suspension this winter and maybe do a few little tweaks and maybe some surprises to make it look a little bit different next year, because I think I've got a kind of, it deserves like a little twist to make it look a bit different again. But next year, the hope is Italy.
So you said, I think 4,500 kilometres in it this year?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
Is the plan for that to maybe come down a bit, but maybe a couple of longer trips rather than lots of shorter trips?
Maybe. Yeah, I mean, I can't, it's nuts really, because James, who built the engine, said to me, pop it back when you've done like 300k or something, and we'll adjust it all up and that. And I saw him at a show, and he said, how far have you been there? I said, well, I've done about 2,000 kilometres now. He's like, yeah, that'll be worn in then. And so I need to get it over there to get it adjusted up, because that's quite a lot of mileage really. But how good is that? That's good fun, isn't it?
Well, we talked about the car shows, but you have done a few fairly significant cycling events as well. The Tour of Britain?
Yeah. So Tour of Britain, they asked us to go and be part of the media launch for the Tour of Britain. That came through Suffolk, so that was good fun. A retro festival, as I say, in the Cotswold. Another one up near Doncaster. That was a fair old trek as well. That was the Tom Simpson Memorial Ride. So Tom Simpson was a famous British cyclist who died halfway up Mont Ventoux during the Tour de France, and there's a ride every year that remembers Tom. He was one of our best ever cyclists, but he had already signed for and was due to switch teams from Peugeot, who he was riding for, and he had signed to ride with Felice Gimondi for the Salvarani team in 1966. That was his team that he'd already signed for and was due to ride with. Anyway, that team. So again, what a fantastic little little link up that I wasn't expecting, but just came about. And there was a chap there with a 404 team car and a Peugeot 504 and a couple of others. So again, so I kind of got there's a little group of us with team cars. There's the people who are into retro bikes. There's people into the cars. It's been really nice to have so many combined interests to have a bit of fun with. And then just telling the public about them, because they're just so interested. You laughed when you saw the car. You see I've got little cycling figures on the dashboard and stuff like that. The kids love that. I mean, I actually quite like that, because it draws the interest of the public. They kind of see these little bits and pieces and, oh, look at the little bikes on the dashboard, and then they'll sort of back off and say, actually, why are they there and what is this? And then they want to hear what it's all about, and you tell them and show them a couple of the old pictures. I've got some old pictures in the car of the car being used, and it really sparks an interest. So I like that. I kind of like that little bit of just showing people what it's all about, which is very different to my old car, which was just a concours, kind of as it would have come out of the factory, kind of no story. But it was just like, well, there you go, that's the car. I've worked out that I like stuff with a story, stuff with a bit going on.
There's a great tradition in the magazine. We pretty much every time we have an editorial meeting about what's going to be in the next issue, it's kind of, what's this issue's Italian road trip? So if you do make the Italian road trip next year, I think that's a story we definitely want to have in there.
That would be amazing. Well, I want to do it, and it would be lovely to do it with some other people. So maybe one or two of us or a few of us will get together, because this is the other nice thing. Thanks to social media these days, the car's got an incredible following already in Italy and in the Netherlands and in America. I had to post a t-shirt to someone in America who wanted to represent Alfabetti, and apologies for the name. Alfabetti just came. I needed a name in a hurry for social media, and yeah, Alfabetti spaghetti was the first thing that came to mind, and it kind of just stuck. So Alfabetti 66 was what it was called. One of the biggest fans I've got at the moment in Italy is Giovanni Salvarani of the Salvarani team, so of the Salvarani factory, and he runs a Facebook page as a tribute to the Salvarani team, and he's been very gracious and complimentary about the car, and he'd love to see it over there, I know. And we've got lots of people who have invited us to events in Italy. I've got an open invitation to go and stay in a hotel on the Stelvio, to go and do the Stelvio Pass, where there's lots of cycling events as well, and some very big cycling festivals called L'Eroica and other ones, which hopefully I could combine with a trip to the Alfa Romeo Museum and a few other trips. I think
there's a Bianchi museum as well.
Yeah, there is. And I think if we can do a little, well, it won't be a little road trip, will it? It's going to be a big road trip. It's going to be a big road trip. But I think that's definitely got to be on the cards. The car's got to go. This car's got to go to Italy. And it's a bit of a personal pilgrimage as well, a separate story. But my father had quite an interesting life. He was born deaf and dumb, and he was one of the first people in the UK, or the first deaf people in the UK, to pass the full UK driving licence. And so he passed it with an interpreter sat in the car with him. That would have been in the 60s, and it made national newspaper. I've got a press clipping of him in, I think it was the Daily Mirror or something, as you know, deaf man passes driving test, and everyone was amazed by this. And he passed his driving test, and 2 weeks later, he gathered up 3 of his deaf friends, and they drove their Ford Anglia on the ferry to France, put it on the auto train. What's it called? Or the
Motorrail here.
Motorrail. Put it on the Motorrail. It took them all the way down to Milan, I think it was, and they did a tour of Italy 2 weeks after he'd passed his test. 4 deaf guys who obviously couldn't speak a word of Italian. They couldn't really make themselves understood in English, and you know, back in those days. But I've got some wonderful photographs of Dad doing that, going around Pisa, Milan, all the main cities, all around Rome. To be able to follow some of that would be amazing. I have got one picture of him where they couldn't find a campsite to stay. They couldn't find anywhere to stay, so they ended up pitching a tent in the middle of a roundabout. And the police came to try and work out what they were doing, couldn't make themselves understood. I think the police worked out very quickly that 4 deaf deaf guys from the UK were far too much trouble to bother with, and ended up just having something to eat with them, and then left them to it. And they spent the night camped on a roundabout in the middle of Italy. So to be able to kind of honour that a little bit and honour the spirit of that and take the car down to Italy, I think has got to be on the plans, hasn't it, really?
I can't think of a better way to end. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure, Guy. It's really nice to see you.
Well, that's it for this episode. We'll be back in 4 weeks' time on Sunday, the 2nd of November. We'll have a preview of the following week's Classic Motor Show at the NEC, plus something which is currently top secret, but which we'll announce over the next couple of weeks. Episode 114 will be available to download from 1:30 p.m. from the club's website, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Podcast Addict, and everywhere else good podcasts are found. Episode 115, which drops on the 7th of December, will be another in our series of No Such Thing as a Brera Quadrifoglio. And we'd love to hear from you if you have an obscure fact for us to research and share on the show. Send your ideas to me at editor@aroc-uk.com by the 2nd of November. Until then, stay safe.